Hi everybody, I want to make a short video to describe how to do the questions in response to reading. So, you're going to have to turn in this twice. So, the first one I believe is due June 30, although it depends when you watch this video on when that date. So check the class schedule. So you may or may not have that date. But in the semester, you're turning your questions twice. So essentially what you want to do is have an open Word document. And for each class, you will simply add in your questions and response reading for that class. So let me talk about this specifically. So in front of you guys, you have what the cover page will look like. So in that Word document, you want to have a cover page on there that looks like this. And you'll see Anthony Everett's right there. That's he's the author of our textbook Augustus. Put your colon in there, and then it's Life of Rome's First Emperor. So you want title, colon, subtitle. Both those should be in italics. Also, you're going to have your textbook, which is by Alfred Andrea and James Overfield, The Human Record, Sources in Global History, Volume 1 to 1500. So that's what the top of your cover page will look like. The font size you want to use is 12, New Times Roman, black, of course. And that'll be by you, of course, not by John or Jane Doe. That'll be by you. And then my name on there, Professor Lorenz, History 4A. That's not our section number. You guys can fix it because that's not us. And then whatever date is the date that the journals are due. Now, specifically, here's what it's going to look like. So, I just did it for one day, but it actually will be for the first day of the semester, June 21st in the case for this class. But it may vary depending on the class. So first off, put the date. And these are all the questions that you will have for homework for that day. Now, in a Zoom class, we'll actually use these questions for the next day, which would be the 22nd in the case of my sample here. But you'll put the day of the day they're assigned. So you put June 21st, and start off, put Anthony Everett's Augustus. Put Augustus in italics, so it is a title, and then underline that, and then using bullets, begin to lay out your questions per each individual specific reading. So for Augustus, for our first day class, you're reading the preface, the introduction, chapter 1, chapter 2. So in that case, for those of you who are attending Zoom class, you only need one question per reading. Now, a lot of you guys who are working or for other reasons cannot attend Zoom class, you're fine, but you need to have two questions. So just keep in mind, my sample right here is based on a student who is attending Zoom class and they need only one. But the vast majority of you actually will need two questions, not one like you see here in my sample. So what you see here in my sample, you're going to double it. So for this case, for example, there's a preface. So put the preface there after the bullet point. And you actually have two questions there. So maybe the way you would do it is you might simply, let me open document, you might have another preface again. So it might look like this. And then you'd simply start your next question. See what I'm doing there? So instead of having just one, but okay, so, all right. So write your question out, put quotation marks around your question. Once you finish your question, then put parentheses and put the page number that specifically prompted that question. That way when we're discussing this in class or I'm checking later, I can go to the page and specifically that prompted you to think, I wonder this. Well, a little bit more about these questions. Remember, the questions are not questions that you know the answers to. It simply is honestly, as you're reading, you come across something like, I don't understand. Why would that be the way it is? And then, okay, perfect. That's the kind of question you're going to write down. Again, notice, by the way, there is no answer, right? Because if you know the answer, you should not ask that question, right? These are questions that you genuinely do not know the answer to, but in order to understand the text more clearly, you would like to know the answer to it. So there's no answer. We'll discuss this in class, or I'll just read these when I'm grading them. But honestly, it's an honest question that you're asking. Additionally, typically don't ask a question that involves simply a vocabulary word. Like, for example, you come across an English word, you're not familiar with that word. Maybe the word, for example, would be like atrocity. And like, I know what atrocity means. My question is, what does atrocity mean? No, that's something you can simply Google. So if it's something that you could simply Google, and anybody could Google that, and you know the answer, typically that's not the kind of question you would ask. It's more of like an understanding question. So for example, from the preface, the question for my sample here says, how does one today make judgments about issues that ever terms certain forms of degradation that one common in the Roman world, such as slavery, inferior status of women, imperialism, etc., that do not fall into the streams of smug, self-righteous presentism or a moral relativism that upholds, there's a typo there, no universal standards of humanity or morality. Now, by the way, that's my question. Your question does not have to sound like that. I'm not looking, just be thoughtful. That's all I'm asking, be thoughtful. You don't have to think, oh, I gotta make this super, no, you don't. That's just, I've been reading this for a while. When I was making these questions about half an hour ago, that occurred to me. You naturally have your own questions. You do not have to model after what you just saw. Some of them are much more simple. For example, for the introduction, the second reading you guys had said, what does the term lotus eater mean? How does Everett apply this to Augustus at the time of his life? Okay, that's much simpler, right? And then you put the page number, in this case, Roman numeral number 33. Okay, that's much simpler. Okay, it is true you could Google lotus eater, but it's not a common vocabulary that you and I have in English language. It has a very specific meaning. So that would be a good one to Google and say, I know what that means. And how does it apply to this context? Okay. You see for chapter 1, scenes to prevent your childhood. So in this case, in Augustus, put the chapter there. Now we start reading the introductory chapters. Put the title of the chapter, and then you can jump in your question. How is Roman slavery practice in Rome similar and different to slavery practice in American history? Oh, that's a big question and a good one. Okay. Again, you don't know the answer to it. Perfect. That's why you're asking it, right? You're like, I wonder. Because Romans had a ton of slaves. I'm curious. How is that similar to the American story of slavery as well, too? I assume there's similarities and differences. What would those be? Perfect. Excellent question. There you go. Page 10 that prompted that. And then finally, the last read for Augustus for this first day of class, chapter 2, the great uncle. Since Marius and Sulla seized power in Rome through military force, as Julius Caesar would do a generation later, why is it that Julius Caesar has become a household name, while Marius and Sulla are little remembered outside of brief subjects of study in a history class? Find some typos in my own work there. Page 19. Okay. Again, no answers right. Just these would be great questions. So for those of you guys who in Zoom, perfect questions to prompt us to have a discussion inside our Zoom class. Perfect. One last thing, I mentioned this already, but just to reiterate this. For the vast majority of you guys who are watching this, since you cannot or are unavailable to do the Zoom class, that's fine, it's not going to hurt you. But remember, you have to do 2 questions per reading. So you have 2 for the preface, 2 for the introduction, 2 for chapter 1, 2 for chapter 2. Make sense? And then we're almost done, but not quite, right? Then you have your questions from the human record. Now you had 3 readings for today, right? Epic Gilgamesh, the Book of Deuteronomy, and the Bhagavad Gita. I'm not going to take time to read these questions. You're welcome to, but I'm not going to take time to read these questions right now. But you get the idea, right? So, by the way, I do want, for the most part, when you're doing the primary sources, try to direct the question from the primary source itself. Oftentimes, the editors will give you a preview that's coming up. It's very important to read that, but I prefer the question itself to come specifically from the primary source document. What I mean by that is, Epic Gilgamesh actually starts on page 5, and the editors of your textbook, Andre and Overfield, they give you an overview of Akkadian civilization, what's going on, okay? Good, read that. Now, if you need to, I don't mind a question asked from that too, but I'd prefer a question asked from the following primary source itself, in this case, the Epic of Gilgamesh. So that's what you can put in there for page 9. And then Book of Deuteronomy, same deal. And then from Bhagavad Gita, same deal. So again, for those of you guys in Zoom class, you'll have 1 question per reading from the human record for the class. For those of you guys who are not able to do the Zoom class, you'll have 2 questions for each of these. Epic of Gilgamesh 2, Book of Deuteronomy 2, Bhagavad Gita, 2 questions. Last thing, these are worth a lot of points. It's very good for you guys' grade. I just want you to be thoughtful, be specific, put the page number. Do you guys see that way when I'm looking at your questions, I can go to where you found that, and just be thoughtful. For example, the only way you lose points on this is I can tell the student did not read nor think about it. The question's like, I don't know, like, what's Gilgamesh looking for? anyone who read the document knows what he's looking for. That's a question that doesn't make any sense to ask because you already know. No, by the way, if you haven't read it yet, you would not know. I don't know what Gilgamesh is looking at. So before you read it, you wouldn't know. After you read it, though, you know what his quest is all about. So you wouldn't ask, like, what is he searching for? Because clearly, based on what you read, you know what he's searching for. That's the kind of question you'd lose points for. Otherwise, I just want you guys to be thoughtful and genuine. Like, I don't understand. Why would this be this way? Like, why'd they do this? Be specific. Page number, write that down. You're good to go. This is outstanding for your guys' grades. As long as you're thoughtful, follow this format, be specific, you'll get all the points. Very good for your guys' grade. It's also good for us in Zoom class, too, for those of you who can make it. And that's the end of the short tutorial. Now, obviously, today that's June 21st. Tomorrow, you have June 22nd. You'll do the same deal. Repeat all those questions all the way up to the first turn-in date for questions in response to reading number 1. In that case, remember, you already have your cover page on there, right? Cover page on there, and then all your days lined up, and you'll submit that, you upload that in Canvas, and you are good. And you should get all the points. All right, with that, everybody, I'll see you with the next one. Take care, everybody.